In this video we're going to take a look at the basics of game hacking with Cheat Engine. We'll start by installing the program without any adware, and then we'll take a look at the interface, the options that are available to us, and the first 4 tutorials from the built-in tutorial system. We'll then apply the skills that we've learned in those tutorials to a real game. Before we do that, let me just start with the disclaimer that I'm not an expert at game hacking. I have done some of the Cheat Engine tutorials before, and I've done some CTF challenges that involved game hacking, and I'm also okay at reverse engineering, so those things will help. But a lot of the content will be new to me, and I will probably make some mistakes and miss some things as we go. But I think it's a good time to try and teach content, make videos, whenever you just learn something new, because when you're quite experienced at something, you take things for granted, and you forget to mention things which beginners just won't know. So hopefully that will help. So the reason that I'm making this video series now, and we'll be doing more game hacking content in future, is that game hacking has become quite a big field in bug bounty. I've put a list of programs here, and I'm probably missing quite a lot. Intigriti will certainly be expanding the list soon. And these are games companies which offer bug bounty programs on these various platforms. There are some internal ones as well, and vulnerability disclosure programs. And there was recently a Epic Games live hacking event with HackerOne. I think it was 24 hours or 48 hours long, where they get the top hackers together and basically try to hack into Epic Games. They paid out around $700,000 for that event. So it's becoming quite a big and profitable area for hunters to look at. And there's not a lot of content focused on game hacking. Obviously there is a lot focused on web content, which is what you traditionally see on bug bounty platforms. So hopefully this series will encourage some people to take a look at some of the game hacking programs and get into game hacking, reverse engineering and stuff like that generally. So apart from that, on this list I put together, I've got some researchers here. Shout out to HG Real, who's helped me a lot with finding resources and just general tips about game hacking in relation to bug bounty. I've also got some bug reports here. It's quite hard to find bug reports, even more so than web content. So if anybody finds any cool bug bounty write-ups, which I don't have here, please do send them across to me on Twitter or Discord or something. Or just leave a link in the YouTube comments, although YouTube's a little bit funny about links, so it might not show up. We've also got some tutorials and guides here. I'll try to keep expanding this as we go. There's some creators. And I must say, shout out to these creators. People have been making awesome game hacking content for years. Stephen Chapman's got an amazing channel, and Live Overflow with his series on Minecraft hacking and Pony Island have been really valuable resources, so I'll keep adding to this as well. We've also got some research, some vulnerable games, and some game hacking tools. Something else which I'll expand upon in future videos, but deserves a mention here as well, is the importance of ethics when it comes to bug bounty generally, but especially with game hacking. We know that with bug bounty it's important to stay within the scope and to not do anything malicious, not cause intentional damage to companies. And that's a bit easier than when it comes to game hacking, because you can go and create multiple accounts on a website for testing, and you can go and try to target one account from another. Sometimes that's not quite as easy when it comes to game hacking. Game platforms should ideally allow you to create multiple users so that whenever you're testing multiplayer hacks, you don't actually interfere with real players. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to game hacking, most companies are less interested in single player exploits and being able to gain more money or unlimited ammo and things like that, and are far more interested in bugs that allow other players to be either attacked directly, thinking of like remote code execution and things like that, or being able to conduct a DOS attack so you can actually cause other players to be kicked out of a game, or you can cheat in a multiplayer game, a ranked game, whereby, for example, you have God mode and other players don't stand a chance. So in terms of actually finding those vulnerabilities, it's important not to cause damage to other players. So with that out of the way, let's go and download Cheat Engine. I'm going to search for it here in Google, and we'll go to the official source for download, Does it have a description here? Not really. Now notice all the pop-ups here. We've got like install now in big, we've got start download down here, and we've also got this big download cheat engine button, and all of them look quite malicious to me. But this one is actually okay, the download cheat engine. So I'm going to click on that. Don't click on this ad that pops up saying start now, but you can see that it's actually downloaded cheat engine 7.4.exe. There are apparently some sources that have cheat engine without the adware, but I'm just going to use the official source because I don't want to redirect anybody to an unofficial source which later ends up being malicious. And we can also see here a short description. So it's an open source freeware memory scanner and debugger written for the Windows operating system. I think you can get an Android version as well, and it's used for most often for cheating in computer games, sometimes modified and recompiled to support new games. So it is actually quite a powerful tool. There's a lot we can do in it. We'll start off with the basics, so no need to worry about the complexities for now. Let's go and open up our downloads, cheat engine 7.4. Oh, by the way, I'm running this in Commando VM, which is a Windows VM designed for pen testing. You don't need this. All you need is a Windows system to run this on. I just use this for all my Windows stuff, but most of the tools on it are for penetration testing and won't help you at all when it comes to game hacking, so I wouldn't worry about installing all those unnecessary tools unless you've got loads of memory and time. But anyway, let's go to next and look at what we've got here. Endpoint Protection Elite. So you can read through all this. This is basically going to say, do we want to accept to the installation of this random tool? I'm going to say decline. It's asking me, do we want the McAfee Web Advisor? I'm also going to say decline. And that should be it. Hopefully it doesn't install anything that I didn't ask it for. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so launch on exit. Do you want to try that tutorial? I'm going to say no for now because we'll open that up. And I have this in dark mode. I know a lot of people don't like the dark mode of this tool, and I kind of agree, it's not the best, but I do personally prefer it to the light mode. So I'm going to stick with it for now. In terms of our interface here, you can see we've got this flashing icon at the top. This is asking us to select what we want to attach cheat engine to. So we can basically attach this to any process that's running. And we can also load applications through here as well by opening here, open the folder, and you can actually open up the game that you want to run. Then you can see on the right we have our scanning options, so we can basically go and select some different options here and scan for values in memory. Whenever we find those addresses and those values, they're going to show up in this box here, and then we can actually select the addresses, the values, and we can use this little arrow or double click them to move them down into this address holding bar at the bottom, which will basically keep track of all the addresses and the values we're interested in. And we can go up to our edit settings. There's a lot of options in here. Maybe we'll run through some of them as we go through the tutorials, but probably not too much of it will be important here unless you want to set up some hotkeys. So for example, you'll see as we go through some of the tutorials that we're doing a lot of scanning for next value, be it exact and increased, decreased, etc. And it's quite slow for constantly changing the drop downs and hitting next scan, so you can actually just set these up so that you can do it with one key. And you might want to set up a speed hack as well if you're using this against a real game. Sometimes the game goes so fast that you end up dying, or the game ends or something while you're trying to move between the game and cheat engines, so you can slow it down using a speed hack or speed it up if for other purposes. And the enable speed hack option is right here for whenever you want to do that. You can also, there's plugins that are available, you can write scripts and set various debugger options. We don't need to do any of this stuff now, but just be aware that those options are there. And you can create cheat tables, you can save them, you can load them. And here is our tutorial here for 64-bit I'm going to use. So this is our tutorial. It pops up, and let me maximize this so we're not losing any space. And you can read through all this. I'll try to just kind of summarize what we're seeing. It's telling us to open process and select the tutorial. So that's what we'll do if we're ever dealing with a game. We'll run the game, and then we'll go into this processes, we'll select the process. In this case it's the tutorial 64.exe, and that's it. It's now open, and I think that's it. It just wants us to go next once we've done that, so let's click next. And this part of the tutorial tells us that our health is currently at 100. As you can see down here, we've got a button hit me, which is going to remove some of that health, and the goal is to set the health to 1000, so there's no way to gain health without cheating. The only thing we can do is decrease health. It also lets us know that we want to start with the exact value option over here, scan type, and also tells us that the value type should be at least 2 or 4 bytes. 1 byte will work, but there'll be some issues, and 8 bytes might work. You can see here what we've got. We've got binary, bytes in various amounts, floats, doubles, strings, array of bytes, all ungrouped. So depending on what type of value this is running as in the game, will depend what we need to have set here, but for a lot of the options we'll be able to just use 2 or 4 bytes. So I'm going to leave this as 4 bytes, and it tells us what to do here. Rather than reading through it, let me just try to explain how we can do this. So essentially, whenever we want to scan for a value, we know that this value is 100, that's the health in memory. So I'm going to type in here 100. We don't want it in hex because that's a decimal value, and that's an exact value. So the options are, we could say that if we don't know it's exact, it might be a health bar and it doesn't show the number, so we'll just be able to say that it's an unknown initial value. In this case it's exact, it's 100, and we do our first scan, and this basically brings up all of these memory addresses where the value is set to 100. So they're all set to 100, some of them are here in green with some information about the process, and we want to now make a change to that value so that we can track it, because we don't know which of these values is our health, and some of these values, if we change them, they might crash the program, they might cause some other issues with a game that we're playing. So we'll click hit me and we'll see that the health goes down to 97. So if I go over here now and say 97 and next scan, that's important, don't click new scan, we do next scan and we'll see there's only one value left, and we can see the first value was at 100 and now it's at 97. So we could click it again and see, okay, it's gone down to 95, it was 97, it started at 100, so it looks like it's definitely our health. So you can click on that, you can click on this little red arrow, or you can double click it. It'll go down to this address holder at the bottom where we could give it a description. We could say that's our health, and you could also give it a color as well, which would be good if you're tracking a lot of different values. And essentially now we can just try to modify this value. So let's try and set it to 1000. It's at 1000, and notice now that the next button is enabled. So we successfully changed the value to 1000. So let's go into the next step. And this time it's telling us that we've figured out how to use the exact value option. So this time it's still got the health, but it doesn't tell us what the value is. So it might be 100, it might be 1000, it might be 1, it might be 2. You just don't know what the health is set to initially. But we know that, oh actually we do know what it's set to. It's set to between 0 and 500. And we need to change it to 5000. So again, we'll leave this as the value type as 4, and we'll change this to unknown initial value. Oh sorry, we need to do new scan. We'll change the scan type to unknown initial value. We don't know what it's starting with, so we'll click first, and nothing shows up, but we can see that it did actually find 69,200 addresses. And now we want to click hit me, and we can see it went down -9, so we've got a couple of options here. We could say that it has been decreased by 9, or we could just say decreased. In this case we know it was decreased by 9, so let's just actually say 9. We'll go next scan, and a few options come up here. So again, a few things we could do. We could click hit me again and then go decreased by or decreased value. We can also say unchanged value. So if I put this to unchanged and do next, it's going to get rid of some of them, and basically what we're saying there is the health hasn't changed since we last click hit me, so any of the values that have changed since then, it can't possibly be the health because we've not done anything to affect it. So in some games, or in some instances, you'll have thousands of addresses here, hundreds of thousands of addresses, and you might want to have that set to repeat and just literally keep looping through. I'm thinking of an example where I was playing a game and trying to make the walls, remove the collision detection in the walls. So you could go and pick up items, and whenever the items get picked up, some of these values change, but you're not touching the walls, so you know that it has nothing to do with the wall, and you can basically remove all of those changed values because you're only interested in the unchanged values. And that's okay. It's not going to get rid of any more because you can see these aren't changing here, so let's change this to decreased. Let's do hit me. It's gone down by 2. I'm going to do next. Okay, and let's do hit me again. Next. Hit me, next. And we basically want to drill this down as far as possible. The less that we have here, the better, because if we have a lot of addresses, Some of them might cause the game to crash whenever we try to modify them. You can see I've just selected those all, I've moved them down here. I'm assuming it's this 182 because we were told that it's between 0 and 500. We could click hit me again and notice it's gone down to 179. So it looks like that's definitely the correct one. So change that to 5000 and now we can click next again. On to the fourth and final tutorial that we'll be checking in this video. We can see this one is floating points. So it says in the previous one we used the 4 bytes in order to scan, but we can also use floating points as we saw previously, and doubles and things like that. And in this case our health and ammo are both stored as floating point notations, but the health is a float and the ammo is a double. So we basically need to set both values to over 5000, but we need to also use a different value scan. So let's do new scan. Let's get rid of all these addresses so they're not causing any confusion, and we can start off our value as, let's do exact value, and we'll do a float. We'll say it's 100, and I think it might have also mentioned that we need to, I thought we might have needed to change some of the settings. I think this fast scan sometimes doesn't work too well. I don't see it mentioned here, so let's try it without it. Oh, it says at the bottom, okay, it's recommended to disable fast scan. So if we're doing the double, we'll disable that fast scan option. At the moment we're not, so we'll just select this as 100 and we can do hit me. You can see that one's gone down, so actually that's very easy. We don't really need to do anything else. We can just say that should be 5000. And we do that. If I click hit me, it's now 4997 because we just did some more damage. So just confirming it's working. Put it back up to 5000, and now we need to do the double. So let's do new scan and let's change this to a double. Let us disable fast scan. Exact scan we'll do first, and it looks like we can already see which one it's going to be because it's an exact value. But again, we'll do fire. It's gone down to 99.5. That looks good. We could do fire again. You can see it's gone down again. Let's change the value to 5001. Click fire and notice that it's now 5001. So there we go. Next has been enabled and we've successfully completed this level. So let's test out what we just learned on a real game. This is called AssaultCube, and I'm going to download the Microsoft Windows edition, and we will install this and try and play around with some of the values. Let me go into downloads. Next, okay, now we get some agreement here. This agreement is basically going to tell us that we shouldn't be modifying the game. So you can see here, you must not modify AssaultCube for the purposes of gaining an unfair advantage over others, and you must not redistribute these modifications in any form, including but not limited to videos, text, and software. Now, there are already plenty of videos and text about modifying this game, or at least in terms of using Cheat Engine to modify values. So just to say that I'm not doing this for any malicious purposes, I'm not doing this against any multiplayer accounts, and again, it's very important that people are able to learn these kind of things, because obviously you have bug bounty companies, you have games companies that need ethical hackers to try and exploit vulnerabilities, but it's also very important that those vulnerabilities aren't used against real players. Just like if you were doing bug bounty against a website, you wouldn't do an XSS attack against real users. You would create multiple accounts and you would confirm that you can perform an XSS attack against yourself, or a CSRF attack or something. So just worth bearing in mind that there are various legal issues in terms of using Cheat Engine and game hacking in general, and game companies haven't always been friendly to gamers who modify games, even if it is just for their own exploration or for their own single player interests. Anyway, let's install it. Let's go next, install. And you can do this on a lot of games. I remember using Cheat Engine on various web-based games to gain unlimited money essentially, and items which, you know, like Halloween and Christmas items from years ago that were only available at limited times. But generally games companies aren't particularly concerned about that. They don't consider those to be valid bugs for bug bounty reports, and they don't really seem to take steps to fix those issues. Anyway, that's it installed. We've got AssaultCube here. Let me open it up. I'm going to have to go and try and change it to a windowed mode. Let me try and change this. I don't know what would be best to do, what to set it to. Let me do 720 by 720 and see how it looks. Okay, that's not reduce the size. Okay, settings. We want to go into video settings. We want it to be windowed. Okay, so disable that full screen option. There we go. I could have made it a little bit bigger, I guess, but that'll be fine. In fact, let's do like 1000 by 1000, see how that looks. I'm not very good at resolutions. Okay, apply. Alright, that looks pretty good. I think we'll have room there. You can use Alt-Tab to tab out of that whenever you need to, because I want to try and make these windows fit a little bit better. I'm accidentally shooting, which is using up the ammo, which I want to try and increase, but that's all fine as well. Alright, so we've got our ammo here. You can see we've got 12 and 60 down at the bottom. I'm going to go over here and say we want to first of all attach the game, so we'll select the client, we'll do our first scan as 12, and we've got this at 4 bytes, exact value, set to 12. Now again, we can do this unchanged value because the ammo is not being used, so I'm going to do next. You see the way it's flashing? It's because we have that repeat option set, so it's just constantly going through and looking for any values that were 12 whenever we did that scan, but are no longer 12. And it'll just remove those from the list. But unfortunately, we've still got 35,000 in the list. So let me go to the game, let me click the button. We've just shot 2 bullets, so we'll go back here, we'll say our next scan is going to be exactly 10 bullets. We'll click next, and look at that, we've got some values that started off at 12, they're all now 10, but we've still got quite a lot, so we'll go back again, we'll shoot 2 more bullets, and now it's at 8, and you can actually see 2 of them here are at 8, so what I'm going to do is select both of those and move them to our address list. I'm going to shoot again, and they're both down to 7, so sometimes you'll see that the values are actually linked even though they are at different addresses. Let's try and change this to 420, and look at that, we've got 420 ammo, so now we can go back and we can shoot for as long as is needed, and we could probably do a similar sort of thing with our health as well, but we need to try and find a way to actually decrease the health, so I'll not do that in this case. For some reason moving the mouse down doesn't actually, maybe it's because the resolution I set, the controls aren't working very well, but we were able to successfully increase our ammo count. So that's the basic demonstration of how we could use this. This could be applied to any in-game items really, so coins, ammo, health, all those good things that you want to try and get more of. So you can go and try this out on games, obviously bearing in mind that there may be some restrictions and that you don't want to do this against multiplayer games, and also most multiplayer games have anti-cheat used to prevent things like Cheat Engine from modifying values in the game. So there are far more advanced techniques when it comes to game hacking, which hopefully when we get into later video series we'll start to look into some of that stuff. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you want to check out these resources I'll leave a link in the description, and if you find anything else that you think I should take a look at, do let me know. And let me know if you're interested to see more game hacking videos. Do you prefer web content? Do you think that game hacking in relation to bug bounty is an interesting new space, or do you think that it's better just to stick with the good old web that people know and love?